welcome into the Off Central podcast. So glad you decided to join us wherever you are watching this from or listening to this podcast today. I am incredibly excited because today we have a special guest in the house. We haven't got Larry Kirk with us today, but we do have a Mr. Tony McCusker.
How you doing, bud?
Yeah, I'm doing good. That low voice.
Sorry.
If you're watching in the car, you're already going to enjoy the soothing tones that is Tony McCusker.
I never thought of it soothing.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for joining us. If you haven't listened to some of our previous podcasts with Tony, Tony is a licensed, would we say therapist, counselor? So all things head doctor and
not a doctor.
All right. Well,
Head
you help
prober.
people, that's for sure. And I know you've been a huge blessing in our church and in our community to lots of people. And we always love your perspective on scripture. And today I wanted to talk about something that's quite close to my heart, because it's a topic I think as I engage with lots of young people in particular, but not just young people, all stages of life, people find themselves stuck. And so today I want to talk about work and our work in the world. And here's the thing about work. You know, as we read scripture, it's important to understand that our work isn't our identity and it doesn't define necessarily our value, but our work does stand as a testament to our progress and our growth. And I always think of the talents, you know, the parable of the talents. And to sort of simplify it, this is a bit reductionist, but, you know, some guys work really hard and there's a net worth and a result for that. And some people don't work very hard at their giftings, and there are consequences to that action as well. And so work in scripture is really important. Right. But I know you've helped a lot of people and continue to do this on a continual basis, as to what happens when you just get stuck in life. I've discovered this from time to time, actually on a yearly basis. But sometimes the seasons are even longer than that, where I just lose, or I meet people who lose all ambition. They lose like the will to get up in the morning, the will to take care of their bodies, to eat healthy. And there's a voice, I think, in the back of a lot of people's heads that says, come on, you know, get up from the couch, do something today. And then there's another voice that says, yeah, but this is really comfortable. And YouTube is right there. And there's another interesting debate and another Off Central podcast to listen to. So let's talk about that topic, and maybe let's explore like maybe some of the reasons. Maybe we could start there, like what in your experience are reasons people get stuck in the first place?
I think the first place it begins is our thinking. We have a lot of old thought patterns that we developed it from childhood. And then it takes a long time once you recognize it, to change it. So if there's been a pattern of that, it can also be hormonal and stuff. Like there's some men even that have a cycle every month and they feel down for a few days, and it's recognizing the pattern and then setting a plan to get through that. For instance, I knew a man who, same time every month, he had 3 days where he was just down. He was grumpy. His mood was low. He was irritable. He knew it. So he set up a time, said with his wife and kids during his 3 days, probably not going to get a whole lot out of me. I'm working, I'm doing stuff around the house, but it's not going to be my normal self. So he set it up and he went through it and he understood it and it was okay. And it's being okay with that and understanding that we all have those times and not beating ourselves up. And I think that can become a hindrance still. Where we get in our heads and we're talking ourselves down and why am I feeling this way and I shouldn't be doing this and I should be doing that, and the should statements. We can get into these routines and it's constantly just breaking out of that. So with everything, sports, anything, I'd say 90% is your thought pattern.
Wow. So it's interesting that you start internally with people, because I think if you were to, this is just my experience as a pastor. I'm not a counselor. I would call myself maybe more of a coach because I'm better at telling people what to do than listening.
Aren't we all?
Yeah, just fix it mode. I haven't quite learned the skills that you've adopted, but I think, even when you talk to people, predominantly people tend to think of the reason I'm stuck is an outside factor, not an internal factor, but you start with the mind, because most people will say, well, I can't do this because my job is so demanding, or if my marriage was better, or if my boss wasn't so on top of me all the time then, or if I had enough money then. And so people tend to identify external factors or reasons why they're stuck. But for you, it starts much more internally with the mind.
Absolutely.
And not just your mind, but with how we bully ourselves. Is that a fair way to describe what you talked about?
One of the things I tell my clients is get off your back. Get off your own back.
So, but how do you motivate yourself to move forward if you're not on your own back?
I think it's, again, it's not putting blame elsewhere.
Right.
I am my greatest obstacle. I am my enemy, not people outside of me, not my job, not finances, not frustrations, not motivation. It's me. So I have to battle me. And physically, there's a part of our brain called the anterior cruciate cortex that when we say yes when we don't want to, it actually builds it. And that's where willpower comes from.
When you say it builds willpower?
It builds that part of your brain, and that's where our willpower is developed.
Oh, wow.
So when we say yes, when we want to say no, like I don't feel like getting out of bed, I'm going to get out of bed. I don't feel like going for this run or this walk or going to work, I do it anyway. And it's in the midst of that part of our brain builds over time. And if we say, yeah, I'm going to stay in bed, and it's not like quick, but over time it can get smaller. And then after a certain age, it can kind of fix. You ever notice that you get people who are older and you can't change their mind about nothing?
Right.
So there's a place that we can come to, and that's why great athletes are who they are. I mean, no one's going to tell me that LeBron James, Michael Jordan, these guys wanted to be in the gym every day. But they did it because they had to be, because the goal was the goal, and they had made a decision to decide to kill all other options. So it's a thinking. And those times do come up when you don't feel like doing it,
right? But
you do it anyway. And you don't allow your feelings or whatever it is to get in the way. And I think another big factor is comfort.
Yeah.
we pursue comfort.
Yeah.
And do you do cold baths or cold showers?
I've done them. I haven't recently because it's hard.
It's very hard.
You get there in the morning and there's that decision in the warm shower to go, do I turn the knob all the way to the left and experience this coldness? And I have to say, personally, I've been losing that battle lately because like you said, it's a comfort thing. Like that's an uncomfortable place to intentionally put myself into.
All right. And that's when we're doing something we don't want to do, we're putting ourselves into an uncomfortable position, at least for the beginning. How many people say, I really don't want to work out today, but then once they do, they feel great that they did it?
Yeah, every time.
Every time. So we focus on that. We don't focus on the feeling that I don't feel like going. We focus on what it's going to feel like at the end, that endorphins are going to be released, and I'm going to feel great, and I know how to get this done. And you start focusing on the reasons why you should instead of the feeling that I don't want to.
Right.
So it's changing our thought, our thinking about it.
It's a positive mindset. It's not the reasons. You're not beating yourself up for why you're not doing it. You're trying to associate the entire action with the positive emotions, hormones, and everything that releases, post whatever it is you're trying to accomplish.
Yep. And all of us fail at it at times.
Right.
And that's okay.
Right. So is it fair to say then, you talked about how when you make these decisions, yes, it literally like physiologically builds something in your brain. So this isn't like a nebulous, you're not just building behavior as something ephemeral, you're building behavior as something that is an actual physical pathway, neurological pathway in your brain.
Yes, and our pathways, which develop into networks, everything we think, say, and do develop neural pathways. And but the great thing about the pathways is it's how we think, because the brain doesn't care if it's good or bad. It doesn't care if it's positive, negative. It cares about efficiency and effectiveness. It has to perform. So it doesn't care. So if I get a thought that says, I'm no good, I can't accomplish, I have no worth, whatever it is, we've been saying that for so long, we've developed that pathway. The amazing thing about the pathway, though, is that I can change it. That's the neuroplasticity of the brain, right? So as I say, wait, no, I do have self-worth. Well, you can't just say it. Like that was a thing that you would just look in the mirror and go, I'm great.
Yes.
People love me.
Yeah.
And it was actually detrimental.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Because what's it based in? You're just lying to yourself. Because where's the facts? But if I say I have worth because I have parents that love me and I'm going to trust that what they said is true. I have friends that love being around me. I have a wife who adores me. So you start using evidence, but then I use even stronger evidence like God said I'm the righteousness of Christ.
Yeah.
He said I'm a child of the living God, that he loves me, that he died for me. I have great worth or he wouldn't have died for me. I'm made in the image of God. I am the Imago Dei. We start saying this stuff. We're developing pathways in our brain that begin to formulate. And as that formulates, the old one breaks. Now my brain starts to go that way instead of having that negative, and it'll come back, but it's going to be a lot easier to go that way. And it begins to transform how we think. So I think back in Deuteronomy, he pulls the Hebrews out of Egypt and then gives them the laws, because 613, because he's developing a nation and sacrificial and all that kind of stuff. So he's building this, but he says to them, put it on your gate, on your doorpost, when you sit down, when you walk along the way, when you lay down to sleep, when you rise in the morning, teach it to your children. Everything your right hand, your power and authority, everything your right hand does, have it on your hand, and your forehead, everything you think and process needs to be through my teachings. Why is he doing that? Because he created us and he knows he's got to break that Egyptian way of thinking and get us to see God's way, not see through humanistic, which is us today. We see through humanistic terms instead of seeing through God terms. And that has to be worked. You become a Christian, you don't all of a sudden just think that way. That's a process, but you have to be active in it. And one of the things I see is a lack of consistency. Right? So I think about, have you ever seen the example of popcorn, microwave popcorn?
No.
This is awesome.
I mean, I've seen popcorn in a microwave.
Yeah. So if you let's say I took a bag of popcorn, and let's say, because the microwaves are a lot stronger, but let's say for the illustration, it takes 3 minutes to pop a bag of popcorn. And I put it in for a minute and I pull it out, let it cool down. I put it back in for a minute, pull it out, let it cool down. I put it in for the last minute. It's been in for 3 minutes. Is it going to pop? No. It'll burn up.
Right.
But if I leave it in there for the full 3 minutes, it pops all the way. Now I know it's probably weird. I heard this, so I actually did it and watched it and timed it. I mean, I'm a fruitcake, but it takes over a third of the time for anything to start happening.
Right. Interesting. Yeah.
So no matter what we're doing, we see no results in the beginning.
Yes. It's the hardest thing.
And
it's why everyone quits the gym after a month.
Yep. Because they're not seeing results. But then it have a little bit. And then towards the end is where it all pops. It applies to anything. The space shuttle. The space shuttle uses 75% of its fuel getting out of the atmosphere and the other quarter floating around in space and landing, because it takes it to get out. So we stop before we see the results. So it has to be consistent, and you have to just be patient and let it come, and then you'll see it. But most people stop. So I'm reading the Bible, I'm doing this, and then you have this 21 days to create a habit. And that's not true for everybody.
Right.
Some people's 30, some people's 100. It doesn't matter. It's not set. You just do it.
That's such a fantastic illustration. I'm thinking back to like when I learned guitar growing up. I've always played guitar and I've been a guitar teacher. And it's exactly the same principle. In the beginning, it takes a long time to learn how to play one song, 4 chords. Like it can take some people obviously are more talented or whatever, pick it up quicker or practice harder. But for most people, it can take weeks and weeks and weeks of getting the fingers in the right place and a month just to learn one song, 4 chords. But you take that same guitarist and, with 5 years of progression, how long does it now take to learn a new song? Well, 4 chord songs is going to take them 5 seconds. They'll go, okay, these are the 4 chords, fine, done. Now you can get more complicated songs, but as you accrue more skills and more talent, the learning is exponentially faster and faster. And so it compounds, just like money compounds, which I think is the same thing you're saying, that all skills, or not just skills, behaviors, motivations, they compound as well. So there should be actually something quite motivating in the fact that if you can do this for the first month, you've actually done probably the hardest portion of whatever it is you're trying to implement in your life. If you can do this habit, if you can, I mean, I'm just pulling a month out of thin air, but the earlier stages are going to be the hardest stages of anything you're trying to put into your life. Is that how I understand it?
Yeah. And I think that there's a decision that needs to be made. And I think people go into it half-heartedly. Like, what is it that you really want to do? And then pursue it.
Right.
So like when I was learning martial arts, I would walk around the house and turn light switches off with my toes. I would do kicks and turn the light switch off and go back. I'd do stances and open the refrigerator
around the house.
door and turn it. And my mom's like, what is wrong with you? You know what I mean? So I'm practicing. It was just an all the time thing. I just thought about it and practiced and did my stances and just over and over and over again. And then you become efficient. Then when you teach it takes you to another level. So I'm sure like with guitar, you're at one point, but then when you start to teach it, it's like you go to a different level.
Yes.
Like it starts to ooze out of the walls into you. So there's different levels that we go. So it's, and I think it kind of plays into giving away and getting in return.
Yeah, which, we're sort of talking about finding motivation again and how to do that. And I've also experienced that motivation comes in mastery. So again, the better I get at something, the more enjoyable the entire experience is.
Yep.
That's true for running or true for teaching, even knowing scripture. The more I learn about it, the more I can see connections. And that gets me more interested. So becoming an expert in something isn't required. This is where people fall all the time because it's not about works. It's not about accomplishing. You're not a human doing. You're a human being. That all of that's true. You don't find your value from what it is you produce, but you do find value in what you produce. Yes. You don't find your value, but you find your place in the world, and you can find enjoyment and satisfaction and fulfillment from the work and in creating something. I think that's what it means to be made in the image of God, is to be a creator by nature.
Absolutely.
And so it does become so long-term motivation. So this is the thing. People are very good at short-term motivation. Or I'm very good at it.
All of us are, yeah.
But long-term motivation, what you're saying is most people quit before they get over the real hump.
Yes.
Or the difficulty part.
Yes. And because they're not seeing results.
Right.
And you have to be patient and understand that the results are coming, and you can't stop right at the door when you're going to start seeing something happen, and then you quit. Or if you're not seeing results, why? Maybe you're not doing something correctly. Right. And that's okay. Just adjust it. And then, fix it and keep going. Like my son worked out for 6 months, never saw one result. One of them, he had some hormone things, testosterone, some thyroid stuff. So that's going to hinder him from doing that. So he had to adjust it. So you just figure out what it is. You don't get discouraged. You don't say, this ain't working, forget this.
Right. You just adapt and you learn.
Yeah. And if you want to learn it, because if you don't really want it that bad, then you're not going to do it. And if you don't believe that you can do it, then you're right. So there's a saying, if you believe you can, you're right. If you believe you can't, you're right.
Yeah.
And it's not about, well, if I believe it just happens. You're not going to put the work in that it takes to be efficient or great at anything. Any success story included hard work, suffering, failure, and that's another big key. You have to change the way we view failure. We need to lean into failure. That's where we learn.
So how do you help people see failure? Like somebody walks in and they're just beating themselves up. Yep. How do you help people process that?
I ask them, well, first I'll start by saying, what does it mean to fail? And they'll say, it means I'm a failure. I said, what if it meant that you were a student? What do you mean? I said, well, when you fail, it's opportunity for you to learn. So then you do it again. And then you fail. And then you do it again. So it's coming to the place of understanding that you are going to fail. Just accept it. You're going to fail. You're going to suffer. It's just the way life is. If you can't accept that, it's going to hinder you from being able to try things or to push through the failure. You're going to see the failure, and then you're going to beat up on yourself, and then you're going to walk away. You got to look at it as an opportunity to grow, figure out why. What do I need to adjust to get to the next step? So John Maxwell calls failure stepping stones to success.
Yeah.
It's the steps. So it's like climbing a ladder. Every failure is climbing a ladder. So Ray Kroc, when he was franchising McDonald's, it was owned by two brothers. They tried to franchise. It didn't work. He comes in. He was a milkshake machine salesman. He comes in, he sees this thing happening. He's like, what is this, man? Like people are sitting under trees, eating out of bags. So he talks to him, and he says that he wants to franchise it. So he finally talks him into it. He had to refinance his home 7 times.
Oh my gosh.
To get it to work. And he had to adjust because McDonald's success isn't about burgers, it's about real estate.
Yes, yeah.
So he had to adjust his thinking, go about it a different way to build the wealth that he wanted, and now it's everywhere. Starbucks, the guy had 5 failed businesses before Starbucks took off. What if you stopped at 5 instead of going for 6? So it's spiritually, it's the same thing. So you're walking and you really want to serve the Lord and you fail. So then you sit and soak in it. Well, that's not going to help anybody. It's not going to help you. It doesn't glorify Christ. Get up and do it again and learn from it. I used to talk about with addicts when they would relapse, they wouldn't want to come in. You had to find them or whatever and say, dude, sometimes that's a part of the story. It's okay. I'm glad you're still alive. Now let's work on it. Why did that happen? And then analyze that part of it and say, okay, how did I go about this that I ended up using again? And then adjust and go at it again. Yeah,
shame is such a big deal for so many people. It's such a blocker, an obstacle, that sense of failure, an embarrassment that a lot of people walk around with and feel. It can be really tough to keep going. It kind of flies in the face of this wisdom that says, if you keep doing what you've always done, you'll keep getting the same results.
Yep.
But at the same time, sometimes you just have to keep hitting the tree with the axe in the same spot, at the same speed, at the same rate for long enough for the tree to actually fall down. And a lot of people go, well, I've tried this for long enough now and I'm getting no results.
Right.
And your point is you just need one more swing.
Well, also, like Stephen Covey in 7 Habits of Highly Effective People.
Yeah, brilliant.
Talks about he's walking in the woods. He sees a guy with one of those saws that have the 2 handles, long saw, and he's like sawing and sawing and sawing. And the guy looks and goes, well, why don't you just stop and sharpen your saw? He said, I don't have time to sharpen my saw.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so you're going to sit there forever. You know what I mean? So sometimes we need to step back, and that's where you're failing.
Right.
You step back, you figure out what the deal is, you sharpen your saw, and start sawing again. And it's just a constant understanding that we are in a continual process of growth.
Yes, yeah.
And that'll happen until the day you pass from here to glory, right? So that's a continual thing. And I think being content, I think people struggle with being content but never satisfied.
Well, but isn't that the great perennial challenge, isn't it, in life, is how do I continually grow and push myself and challenge myself in a healthy way with healthy motivations that aren't self-conceited or narcissistic? There's that whole side of self that we want to promote and push. But there's this whole other experience to life, which is to also sit in utter contentment, and to also be at peace with who you are and your purpose in this world, and not just with who you are, but with where you are right now. So there's a tug, isn't there, between the person we want trying to become and the goals we want to achieve, and this peace and serenity in knowing that doesn't build any extra value in my life. There's just a tug of war, I think, between those two things. And that's always the struggle that I've found is when do I need to sit back and just be content? And when do I need to be like, whoa, you've gone from contentment to utter comfort and luxury. Yep.
And that's, the comfort's a big deal. I think it's really important to be uncomfortable. You know what I mean? To constantly, and when I mean uncomfortable, where you're getting in that cold shower. You don't want to. You're doing the workout when you just don't feel like doing it. I don't feel like reading my Bible today, but you do it anyway.
Right.
You know what I mean? And knowing, keeping in mind that this is how I change. This is how success comes.
Yes.
This is how I grow in my relationship with Christ. Because if I'm a child of God, then there should be a desire there to want to fall in love with Christ more and more. And I find the more I do that, the easier it is not to sin.
Yes. Yeah, exactly.
It's like, and we're all going to do it at times, you know what I mean? But 1 John says, if, he didn't say when, if you sin, we have one that stands on our behalf as an advocate. And I think the way that happens and the way we find contentment and everything is just understanding who we are in him, realizing how much we're loved and really meditating and basking in that so that where I am is okay. It's not where he's going to leave me. Like we'll say it all the time. He accepts you where you are. He's just not going to leave you there. Well, I'm okay where I am right now, but it's not where I'm going to be a year from now.
Right.
I'm going to keep working,
Right.
even if it's just a little bit of change. And I have to be really brutally honest with myself. I have to look in the mirror, like James says. I look in the mirror and I see what's there, and I'm honest about it, and then have the courage to go through the pain to change it. And that's just a fact of life. If we want to change, there's some people who never will, and that's fine. If that's what they want to do, that's between them and God and their story. But I just don't want to. I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
I want to grow, and however that looks for me, because I'm not comparing my life to anybody else. I used to do that, and I'm not doing that anymore because it's a fool's errand.
Right.
You know, and I just need to be the best me for God, in whatever aspect that is: job, spirituality, relationships, and sometimes you got to make some really hard choices in those things that have to be made, and you have to work through all that stuff. Whether it's, you know, ending relationships, or whether it's humbling yourself to make the relationship better, seeing that maybe it's you that's causing the issue, maybe, you know what I mean, and being open about that, and then just doing the work. And for me, I stay motivated, because sometimes, like in therapy, you can see your clients not progressing. Doesn't seem like they're getting it, or they're doing the work.
Right.
Now, if I get frustrated, that's because I'm focused on me.
Yeah.
Why is this not working? Why are they not listening to me? If they would just do that. Anytime you focus on anything exterior, you're focusing on a trigger, you're focusing on a thing that you have absolutely no possibility of changing, and it's going to create frustration, discouragement.
Yeah.
I can't change it. All I can do is be the best me. Now I look at it and say, is there a way that I could bring this across that might be more effective for them? And ask them, is there a way that I could share this, or is there something that you specifically need that I'm not giving? But if I find myself becoming emotional or frustrated or angry, whatever it is, then I'm focused on myself. Because if I was truly focused on them, then I'm going to be worried about them.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to personalize it, and I'm going to adjust to do what I got to do for them.
Yeah.
And I think that applies to everything. Everything.
Yeah. So I mean, okay. So talking about, you know, I think human beings are creatures of habit, and some of those habits are destructive, and some of those habits are beneficial and helpful. But you're going to create neural pathways, grooves, no matter your thinking. It's going to happen at some point. So with that in mind, like this idea that humans are bent and hardwired towards building some kind of habits in our life. Let's say we're taking somebody who's really, they're going through a mindset change and they're wanting to do all the interior work and everything. There's still a place, right, for how do we adjust our environments to support the change that's going on internally. So for example, I don't know how you found this, but I found like if I want to get back into running, it just helps to have the running shoes in my environment by the door, or you know what I mean? Like to change my fridge to the kind of environment that's going to be productive to drinking the water that I need to drink and eating the food that I need to drink to fuel this. So how do you help people create like their environments around themselves? Like, or let me rephrase the question. What are some of the most destructive environments that people keep going back into? You just wish, man, if you could just change these few things, you would be set up to succeed so much better in life.
So like, I guess it depends on what we're talking about.
Right. What you're trying to achieve, obviously.
Right.
But
and like some people for working out, they'll be like, well, I just can't afford a gym membership. I just don't have the money, or I don't have the time. Okay, so then do a chair workout.
Right, yeah.
I mean, you can do anything with a wall. You can do push-ups on the wall. You can do squats against the wall. You can do all kinds of planks. Don't take anything but just a floor. So there's a lot of things you can do. So we got to get the excuses out of the way.
Yeah.
And then we, like you said, if we want to run, then go and get yourself a pair of running shoes. They don't have to be Air Max. They don't have to be the most expensive thing out there. Get yourself a pair of running shoes, and then there's some adjustment that we're going to have to make. Like, what's your best time? Is it morning? Is it afternoon? Is it evening? Like, what's your best time? And then you arrange your schedule around that.
Right.
So if you work early in the morning, you get off at 2, do it as soon as you get off work. You have kids. Well, I have kids. I have to go pick up the kids. I got to make dinner. I got to be home to fix this and fix that. What I've had folks do is take a schedule like Monday to Sunday in 15-minute increments.
Okay.
And I'll say, sit down. What I want you to do is just live your life. But I want you to write it out.
Okay, so don't change anything about your normal day-to-day habits. Just
do it.
Yeah, just diary, journal down what you would typically do in a normal week.
Yep, in 15 minutes. So if
15-minute intervals.
So if it takes you a half hour to get ready for work or 45 minutes, whatever, then you write down, get ready for work and scratch out that amount of time.
Gotcha.
And at the end of it, we look at it. Always.
How many lies are there? That's what I want to know.
there's time that we find.
Yeah, yeah.
Because you've been sitting around watching 3 hours of TV a week or more, 7 hours of TV a week.
Right.
So you can't cut that down to 45 minutes and work out for 15?
Yeah. And this is what you mean, like we're changing the environment, but really we're changing the mindset that says I don't have the time to do this or I can't implement these things in my life.
Because I can have, how many people buy a treadmill, buy a Bowflex, and never use it?
Yeah, yeah. Well, and that's so true. This is such a great point. A lot of people get more enamored in the process rather than actually doing it. Mm-hmm. So get interested in running, they'll read the magazines, they'll watch the podcast, they've got the Garmin running watch, they've got, this new compression air thing for their legs. They've booked the chiropractor appointments they got the massage appointments all ready to go for recovery. All of the things that surround maybe the 1% to help recovery, but they forget the 99, which is just getting out there and doing the run.
And if your mindset's not there, you're not going to do it. You know what I mean? Yeah. It's just not going to happen. Even like when I was instructing martial arts, you would always have a guy or girl who was just very athletically inclined, and they would be phenomenal at it. Some would become really good fighters. They were just really good because they had that. Then there was others who would come in and couldn't even bend down to tie their shoes without falling over, had no coordination. So when they get to black belt, that guy who couldn't tie his shoes at first is never going to be the guy who had all this athletic ability and coordination to start with. He's just not. Mm-hmm. But that guy, he could tie his shoes without falling over. He could do his kicking set without falling over. He learned coordination. And I'd say he had more growth than the guy who was better, use quotes, because, but it's for what he did. And he made a decision that he was going to do this. And in the beginning, imagine doing a front kick and having a hard time standing up.
Yeah, yeah.
How discouraging is that?
Yeah, yeah.
So why is this guy, and the other good dude, he may have to learn form and develop speed and power, but he can do it without a problem.
Right.
So why that guy stay with it?
Right, right.
Because he made up his mind.
There's a willingness in learning anything new or getting out of a rut, and a willingness you have to almost embarrass yourself or to be the novice, like to be the person who isn't good at this. And that's often a pride issue for lots of people to get over themselves and go, okay, I'm going to be the guy in the gym who's picking up much smaller weights than everyone else, doesn't really know how to use the equipment. Of course, we're talking about maybe more superficial goals, but I think this rings true for somebody trying to get over depression or somebody dealing with addiction or anybody in some kind of mental health crisis. They have to be willing to accept that in the beginning of learning something new, they're going to be the novice.
Yep. And I tell people all the time, I said, you're going to do this. Let's say someone has an anger issue. They blow up a lot and stuff. So I'll give them a skill to help them calm the emotions. It's called stop. And it helps them if they use it in the beginning, because if you wait until your anger is almost built up, it's not going to work. And I tell them that. So if you have a scale of 1 to 10, you need to use this around 2 or 3, because if you wait to 6 or 7, the ball's rolling down the hill and you're not going to stop it. So use it early on and recognize what physical reactions are you having. Are you starting to get hot around your neck, your face? Are you starting to shake a little bit? Are you starting to get heart beating fast? What are the things? So recognize that. And then you stop. And then I tell them, you're going to fail. And you're going to fail. And that's okay. You're supposed to fail, because that's when you learn. So when you fail, come back, we'll talk about it. And then they'll be like, man, I've done it for 2 weeks. It's been great, blah, blah, blah. Everything's good, man, I didn't fail. And then inevitably they fail. And they're like, man, I'm kind of backslide. No, you're not. No, you're not. Or an addict will say, I had a year of sobriety, I had 2 years of sobriety that I used. I lost it all. Really? So you lost everything you learned. All that's gone now, like you're back at square one. Well, no. So then you haven't lost anything. You relapse, which sometimes is a part of the story. Get off your back. Don't pout. Let's look at why, and let's keep moving forward. And it's keeping that mentality.
That's so powerful.
Yeah, that's where we have to be. And all of us go through those times of being like, we all do. But it's how long you're going to sit there, and are you going to use it? And all these, like any failure, any suffering is an opportunity for growth and learning.
Yeah.
And if we go at it with that mindset, also we don't mind it so much.
Yeah.
Like, okay, I can deal with that. I mean, nobody wants to suffer, but you know what I mean?
Sure.
When it comes, you lean into it. It's okay. So God, what are you going to show me about this? I mean, that why and what was a big deal for me, man. Huge. And now I don't ask why anymore. The only why I ask is, like, why am I not getting this? So what is it I need to learn? Like, that might be a why, but I'm not asking why things happen in life. It's a fool's errand. It doesn't help. It doesn't get you anywhere. And it's really self-centered.
There's an old proverb, sort of sage proverb that says, asking why is a little bit like getting bit by a snake, having the poison go in you, and rather than getting healed and dealing with the poison, it's spending your life chasing the snake to tell it why you didn't deserve to get bitten. Right. and ask, why did it do this to you?
That's awesome. That's really good.
And it's like, okay, it's a fool's errand.
Yeah.
You didn't deserve it. You probably will never get the answer to why it happened. But if you don't spend time focusing on the healing and the poison, that's actually the much more current issue in your life than figuring out the existential why question.
And I'm finding that with depression and anxiety, I mean, there's other mental health diagnoses that are chemical based. I mean, it's schizophrenia, bipolar, things like this are chemical based. But when you have depression and anxiety, is really about what we believe and what we think. So if we have a negative core belief about ourselves, the future, others, then it's going to affect how we think, which is going to produce feelings, which is going to produce behaviors.
That's so good. So let me just give you a quick fire question. For somebody suffering with depression and anxiety, what are 4 things that they can change about their environments or their habits or their life? What are the 4 things that or a couple things that you would say immediately do this, change this right now?
With depression, activity is the most important.
Activity.
Yeah, because people
moving your body.
Yes.
When you say activity, it's not Legos. Is that an activity? No, it needs to be something physical.
Get up and walk, clean the house, dig a hole, something. Just get active, because those endorphins is our happy chemical. So when we're battling that, we have to get up and begin to do something.
Right.
Use coping skills on a regular. So if making you feel better is taking a shower or affirmations, things like that are important to do. But the number one thing to do is get active. And that's really hard when you're dealing with somebody who's really depressed. They don't want to get out of bed.
No.
They don't want to get off the couch. They just want to sit there. And that's really dangerous. So you got to get up and get active, which will give you that little bit of edge to move forward. Now, if someone's depressed and they're suicidal, then medication is the first thing.
Right. Seek help. And
But beyond that, and then sometimes it's hard because the environment is part of what's causing the depression.
Right.
And you can change the environment, but sometimes people don't have that ability to do that. So with anxiety, it's different. Anxiety is doing relaxation skills.
Okay.
Yeah, you've got to do relaxation skills, because with anxiety or trauma, it's a neurological issue. People think it's something in their head. Partly it's your brain, but it's your neurological system that's overcharged. Your cortisols are flowing through your body continually, and they're there for a purpose. They're there for your sympathetic nervous system to heighten you up, to get you out of danger. So there's something that's happened where you perceive your body, your brain perceives you're in danger.
Oh, that's brilliant. Wow.
So
I had no idea. You tend to just lump them in as the same thing, depression and anxiety, but approaching them almost the opposite way. Feeling depressed, lethargic, you could call it stuck or whatever. You need to get up and move. If you're feeling anxious and heightened and heart rate is up and there's a sense of, sweaty palms or whatever it is that all anxious people feel, that their eyes are upon them, they feel like they're in a fishbowl. So it's about breathing techniques, slowing yourself down, music, meditation, all of these things to calm yourself down.
Right. So for anybody listening who may be dealing with anxiety, if you're going into an anxiety or panic attack, I would use TIP. So the first part of that is the T is TIPP. The T is temperature control. So you want to get, and I would keep like one of those igloo ice things in your freezer, or just a bag of ice.
Yeah.
And you put ice on your neck. Maybe even splash, if you don't have that, just splash some cold water in your face, something, because the cold shocks your system to help bring you out of it. So you get the cold. That's why cold showers are good for people who have anxiety, because it actually adjusts and helps the anxiety. And it makes you breathe.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So it forces you to go into that breathing and control your breathing.
That's brilliant.
So you put yourself in a position like that, okay, now I have to do this. And then you build on that. You start off with, if you can get to 30 seconds, super. And then you build up to where you can stand in cold water for like 2 minutes. And if you can do that, that's really good. And if you do that for 4 years, when you go to do it the next time, there's a part of you who's going to say, we don't need to do this. We don't want to do this because it's uncomfortable. And at times it can be painful, but you do it anyway.
Yeah.
So with the anxiety, like that tip, and then I is intense exercise, which gets that stuff out of you. It helps to get your nerves going and get the energy out of you.
Okay.
P, the first P is paced breathing. So a good thing to do with paced breathing is the 4-7. So you breathe in through your nose for a count of 4, breathe out with a count of 7, and you're doing it controlled, and you can speak to yourself. There's nothing to be anxious about. Like, I'm safe. There's nothing going on, and you speak that. And then the other is progressive relaxation. And that's really good to do at night before you go to bed at night. Lay on your bed, put on some worship music, rain, fireplace, whatever the sound is that's relaxing to you. And you start with your feet, and you take muscle groups, feet, calves, thighs, butt, stomach, and you tense it up for a count of 5, and then let it relax and feel the tension leave. And it's taken from like acupressure. So you're squeezing the muscles and letting it tense, letting the stress and the tension relieve, and it relaxes you. So that's tip. And then there's another one that's really good. Works. I've had a lot of clients say it was like really good. It's called soft eyes.
Okay.
So your eyes are just an extension of your brain. So what you do is you find an object, you stare at it, but you don't stare at it intently, but you just kind of look at it and allow your eyes to relax until it blurs. And then when it blurs, you close your eyes and you do your 4-7 breathing. And that just really relaxes you. It's really good.
Oh, those are amazing techniques.
So and then I try to really press that this is something that you do when you're experiencing anxiety, but you want to make a habit of doing it daily.
Yes, yeah.
Because you need to teach your system to slow down, to calm. As you're talking to yourself, everything's good. There's nothing to be anxious about. And then just knowledge is good. Well, I'll explain all this to them. Sympathetic nervous system, parasympathetic nervous, the parts of the brain that hold fear and things like that. And there's techniques you can use to relieve that. So that's the first thing, is just helping them be able to relax and then change their thought patterns.
Okay, yeah.
Because you
can't do anything while people are in crisis mode. It's physiologically, you've got to get them to where there's equilibrium.
And I've had clients talk about traumas and things and start to have an anxiety attack. So we stop and say, okay, let's do our breathing. And we'll do our breathing. We'll do some, and there's some other things, but it's more involved, and you have to go through it. But we'll do the techniques until they calm, because when emotions go up, cognitive ability drops.
Yes, yeah.
So you have to keep yourself regulated. If you get dysregulated, you're not going to be able to function and think properly. So if you're trying to work out these thoughts and change your thought patterns, the first thing you need to do is, they'll try to do that, and they're like, I can't do it. Well, no, you can't. Calm yourself down first, then do that. Right. So we got to be in the right state to be able to make it effective.
That's really, really good. This final, sort of portion, want us to talk about practical steps. I mean, that's so helpful, I think, for a lot of people. I've never heard it articulated like in particularly those two distinct different ways, from depression and anxiety, and different ways of dealing with that. I grew up in Scandinavia, and big part of the Scandinavian culture is jumping into cold lakes, frozen lakes, and but they'll usually have a sauna, so you'll go straight from a sauna. And, they're European, so it tends to be naked. And just a bunch of guys, but the sauna will be right there on the lake. And so you run straight out into the snow, you dive into the lake, you hop out back into the sauna, and you repeat this process. This is a really common commonly done in Scandinavia.
Wow.
And but it's a similar feeling, I think, to what you're talking about, this sort of contraction of the muscles. They say it's so healthy for you because, you know, in the cold you're breathing deep and you're contracting, but then in the sauna everything is relaxed and it's slow.
Oh, wow.
And teaching the body to be able to handle those two extremes.
Yeah, that's cool.
But yeah, anyway, that's it's not very easily set up in Maryland to be able to do that. But
No, yeah, that'd be tough. I guess if you had a pool or something, but then it's
yeah. Now
or have your sauna in your cold plunge right beside each other.
Right there. Now the thought terrifies me. I'm like, would my heart be able to handle it?
Right.
So yeah, I mean that's already given some practical advice, but just you know, what questions does someone ask themselves when they feel like their ambition is slipping away? You talked about these mindsets. Somebody just feels like it's disappearing. Maybe it's not extreme emotions of depression or, you know, dealing with something that's maybe considered more on the extreme end of the spectrum. But how would you just encourage somebody to get on, to have the courage, to have the faith, to, you know, to just make that next step? Or if they're feeling like I'm just a bit timid right now, yeah, what would you say is sort of your elevator pitch to somebody like get going?
Yeah, I think it would be just start small.
Yeah.
And just be patient. Just start small. You don't have to plunge in and be like all you know, they'll want to go out and work out for an hour and they're like, and that lasts not very long. So just start off with 15 minutes. Start off something small, just like you guys do with the read, pray, worship, you know what I mean?
Yep.
That's 15 minutes. It's small. And that's great.
Yeah, you don't have to start Amazon tomorrow, but you can begin to read a book on business management. Or
That's right. That's right. Just start small, watch podcasts, do that kind of stuff, and see if it's really what you want to do. And if you know it is, then there'll be some desire for it there. And just know that that desire is going to wane at times, and that's normal, and it's okay. Don't be so like analytical about it. Don't be so hard on yourself about it.
Yeah.
Just it's okay. This is a part of it, and I'm going to press through.
Yeah.
And maybe it's because you're tired. And you just think it's take a step back for a day. It doesn't mean you're quitting. It just means you're taking a step back for the day and recuperating, getting your thoughts back, and then go back at it.
That's incredibly helpful. We live in such a hustle culture, and while we are talking about the importance of work, that you know, the Sabbath, the rest, the peace, the contentment.
Yep.
Like work should flow out of that space of rest.
Yeah. And our society is so work.
Yeah.
Get it done, be the best, climb.
Yeah. Which maybe again is why people just shut down at certain points in their life, you know.
Yep.
And which comes back to exactly what you said at the beginning. You need to understand why. You know, you need to get the mindset right, because if you're working hard to keep up with the Joneses, that why won't hold you or sustain you.
Oh, that's terrible.
If you can work hard because you find absolute joy in becoming the best carpenter and wood crafter, and because it's creative and gives you light and soul, because it sustains your family and that gives you, you know, whatever it is that you need to keep moving, then those are healthier whys. So coming back to that mindset, but you can only figure out that mindset in rest when the nervous system isn't firing on all cylinders.
Yep. And that's why I think it's really important for us to see ourselves as Christ sees us.
Yeah.
We're so, this is a truth too. People will be going through stuff and they'll be like, I should have done this and I didn't do that and blah, 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 and all this stuff. That's okay. So your best friend, think of the person that you love more than anything. All right. Okay. They're going, and then I describe their situation. I may change up a few things. I said, what would you say to them? And all the time, all compassion and just, it's okay. And this is how you can do it, blah, blah, blah. And I just stare at them. And it'll click. Like, why does that not work for you?
Yeah, why can't you afford the same grace to yourself?
Yeah, I mean, we give so much compassion and grace to everybody else, but we don't give it to ourselves. And that's common.
It was the biggest light bulb in my therapy, that moment. And this is going back 10 years ago. And I just, the constant bullying of myself. And then he said, what if this was your sister? What would you tell her? But the grace that came out of my mouth, I would tell her she's loved, that this won't last forever. There's a way through this. You know, all of the affirmation that was so readily available for somebody else was so hard to give to myself.
Yep. And seeing ourselves in that.
Yeah.
That's what God does with us every day. Just the depth of love is insane.
Yeah.
And the only thing that has broken addiction out of my life, the addictions that I dealt with, was coming to realize how much God loved me. And that's what did it. And it just takes away the desire to do anything. Like, you just don't want to, because I don't want to hurt him. I don't want to disappoint him. And I know God doesn't, God is bigger than that. But in my human mind, I just want to love him.
Yeah.
And when you realize how much he's done for you, you're just like, dude, I don't want to go against that.
Right.
That grace, I had a pastor tell me one time that we don't preach grace the way it's taught in the Bible, because then people will go nuts and just sin all the time. And I'm like, that is the dumbest thing I've ever heard in my life. Yeah. Grace motivates you to live for him.
It empowers you.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's like, so that's like just, and I find that is the most important thing, no matter what I'm doing while I'm trying to build my practice, or if God ever decides he wants to put me back in ministry someplace, or if I'm training or whatever it is, I really don't care. Like, I go about my future. I don't look at the past anymore because it doesn't exist. So why am I spending time in something that doesn't exist? It doesn't make any sense. And I'm not going to allow that to control where I am today or where I'm going. And I don't look at the future because it's really none of my business. I plan. When I'm planning for retirement, we try to be wise stewards. But what's coming down the pike is none of my business.
Yeah.
That's God's business. And whatever comes. And I'll be there, whatever. And if I can't handle it, you fall to his feet and say, I need you to get me through this. And he will. So it's just knowing that and resting in that. And that brings a lot of peace and a lot of freedom to do.
That's
just
brilliant.
Do the work.
Yeah.
Love. I mean, he said, be imitators of God. Well, God's love. Well, that's the goal. That's the purpose. Mm-hmm. Love people. Love God. Right? All of the law is broken down to love God, love your neighbor.
Yeah.
We make it really complex, but it's just not.
Yeah. You're to love others as you love yourself. There's a portion of learning to love yourself. And in fact, learning to love yourself will help you to learn how to love others. Mm-hmm. Man.
And in that freedom, we find the motivation to be able to do what we need to do.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, Tony, thank you so much for
you
your
for
wisdom and your insight. There are some things in here that I think are really going to help people, and maybe somebody. If you're not feeling stuck, I guarantee somebody in your world is feeling a little bit stuck in their life, and I hope today just helped you think about those people, think about some tools to help those people, encourage them, motivate them, maybe even push them or give them a light nudge if you have that kind of relationship with them. But thanks again so much, Tony, for your time. Thank you so much for your time. If you could hit that like button, that helps us get this message out there, subscribe, and all the reviews and all that jazz on all the different platforms that you are listening or watching this on. That would really help us. Otherwise, I hope this has in some way enriched your life. Grace and peace.